Welcome to the Paradigm Shifting Podcast, your weekly dose of inspiration, hard truths, and authentic discussions about motherhood, marriage, and self-improvement. I'm your host, Binky Bell, and I believe that marriage and motherhood should be an empowering experience for women. I believe that when we focus on improving ourselves individually, then together we can shift these paradigms that are leaving us feeling burned out, inferior, and victimized. This podcast is for growth-focused women who want to live life with intention and meaning. So with that being said, let's get into today's episode. And welcome back to another episode of the Paradigm Shifting Podcast. Today we're going over Principle 4 from 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by Dr. John Gottman. Now, this principle opens up with a story about two friends, Jeremy and Phil. You see, Phil was selling his car. He bought a car, brand new, it only had 300 miles on it, and then found out he was being transferred overseas. So he was selling this car at quite a huge discount, and Jeremy wanted the car. So he tells Phil, I'm really interested in buying this car, but I want to have a mechanic check it out first. And Phil is like, hey man, there's 300 miles on it, plus you have the manufacturer's warranty. And it's a big discount. What are you going to have it checked out by a mechanic for? This is crazy. So Jeremy tells Phil, I get it, but I promised my wife that before I would invest in a vehicle, I would have it inspected by a mechanic. Now, Phil tells Jeremy, he's like, come on, man. You're going to let your wife tell you what to do when buying cars? You're going to let your wife tell you what to do with cars? And he's kind of like, yeah, I am. And he's like, don't you do that with your partner? And Phil's like, well, no, I don't. I didn't. I'm divorced now. And Jeremy's like, oh, well, maybe that's why. So now Jeremy ended up taking the car in. They found some problem that wasn't covered by the warranty, and it was going to be really pricey, and he ended up not buying the car. But Gottman says, more importantly, he did not buy into Phil's mentality about women and partners in general. You see, because Jeremy values the opinions and feelings of his partner. And this story opens up Principle 4, which is letting your partner influence you. Now, there was a time in very recent history where men did not have to consider the feelings or opinions of their wives when making decisions. Men were the primary decision makers in the house, in the marriage, and for a long time, this really didn't have any effect on divorce predictability, meaning it didn't really contribute to or cause divorces in marriage. It was just the way things were, right? That is changing. Now, Gottman says that they studied 130 couples for 9 years and found that men who allowed their partners to influence them in the decision-making had happier relationships and were less likely to divorce. In fact, they found that when men are unwilling to share power in the relationship, there's an 81% chance that marriage will self-destruct. Let's go over that again really quickly. There is an 81% chance that your marriage will fail if you refuse to consider the feelings and opinion of your partner when making decisions. Now, obviously, both men and women need to be considerate of their partner's feelings and opinions in the relationship. And the point of this chapter is not to single out men exclusively, but the data from these studies indicates that a large majority of women already let their husbands influence and affect their decision-making. A lot of women take into account the opinions of their male partners when making decisions. The research indicates that men often do not return the favor. I want to say, I don't want the comment section to devolve into a man-hating crime scene, okay? So don't get the pitchforks, and this also is not a call to emasculate men or tell them that they need to give up all of their personal power and let their wives rule their lives, okay? What this principle is trying to drive home is that the couples who were happiest and in the most stable marriages were the couples in which the man did not actively resist sharing power and decision making with his wife. What we're talking about here is that the marriages that were surviving were the marriages in which, when the couples did disagree, the husbands actively searched for common ground, right? They didn't just put their foot down and insist on getting their own way. Now, and I already know that this episode will probably ruffle some feathers, and the TikToks that I make about it will probably get like a lot of men riled up, and a lot of women will start, the man hating that is apparently so fun to do on social media. And there's even an argument to be made that religious convictions support a dynamic in which the man is the head of the household and the main decision maker. However, I think everyone would agree that a good leader, is not a bully or a dictator. So what this comes down to is emotional intelligence. So religious conviction or not, it's really my understanding that a foundation of a good marriage is one that's founded on respect, even if you subscribe to the mentality that the man should be the head of the household. That man, if he is the head of the household and the leader of the family, should then be asking himself, do I really want to make decisions that's going to leave my wife feeling disrespected? That's going to leave my wife feeling unheard? That's going to leave my wife feeling invalidated? Is that consistent with my religious convictions or the vision of what I want my marriage and my family to be? Most likely the answer is going to be no. Hopefully that answer is no, right? Letting your partner influence you. At the root of this chapter, what we're talking about here is taking your partner's feelings and their opinions into account when you're making major decisions. A refusal to do this, if you're constantly invalidating your partner's fears, concerns, opinions, and feelings when big decisions need to be made, you're going to make your partner feel left out of the marriage. It is not a healthy dynamic, and there's always going to be some common ground. So when there's disagreements in major decision making, you have to look for the common ground and start looking for the solution from that place. Now, there is an exercise here that there's actually 2 exercises. We're just going to go over one for this. I really encourage you to check out the Gottman Institute website and download the book yourself so you have the full chapter and the full exercises as a resource. Now, one of the exercises for this chapter is kind of fun, and it is kind of like a deserted island kind of exercise. The scenario is that you're stranded on an island, maybe a plane crashed, whatever, and you have a list of 26 items. Now, you will each grab a piece of paper and write down what you consider to be the top 10 most important items to keep from the inventory list based on your survival plan. So you're going to try to figure out how to best survive, and you can only keep 10 items. So you each are going to individually pick your own 10, and then you're going to compare what you picked, and you're going to work together to narrow your list down to 10 items, and you're going to develop a survival plan. Now, the ship's inventory, I will list it here, or the plane's inventory. I don't know. How did you get stranded? Was it a ship, a plane? I don't know. You choose. You choose your survival scenario. Okay. I'll put it up here, but we'll go over it really quickly. 2 changes of clothes, an AM/FM radio receiver, 10 gallons of water, pots and pans, matches, shovel, backpack, toilet paper, 2 tents, 2 sleeping bags, a knife, a small life raft with sail, sunblock lotion, cook stove and lantern, long rope, walkie-talkie sender receiver units, freeze-dried food for 7 days, 1 change of clothing, 1/5 of whiskey, flares, compass, regional aerial maps, gun with 6 bullets, 50 packages of condoms, first aid kit with penicillin, and oxygen tanks. Okay, so that's the list of 26 items. You each pick 10, and then you go over your list together. That means you're going to have to talk it over. You're going to work as a team to solve this problem. And I know it sounds kind of silly, but I think these are fun things to do. And both of you need to be influential in discussing the problems and making the final decision. And then when you're finished, you evaluate how the game went. And there is a series of questions that go along after you do this exercise. And again, you'll have to go to my Instagram to get the list or look it up yourself. But the evaluation is like, how effective do you think you were at influencing your partner? And then it's like, not at all effective, neither effective nor ineffective, somewhat effective and very effective, kind of like that. So you kind of rate how it goes. Obviously, this is not a quick fix or a cure-all if you have trouble accepting influence from your partner. If this is a point of pain in your marriage, if you have a hard time accepting influence from your partner, you'll benefit your marriage enormously just by admitting that this is something difficult for you to do. That will be a major leap forward for your marriage. Your spouse is likely to feel a renewed sense of optimism and hope about improving the state of your marriage just by admitting that this is a hard thing for you. Now, because the way that these principles are designed, ideally you would build upon each principle and you'll be working on each principle as you come upon them. And the integration of all of these principles together will heal all of the areas that you're struggling with. But I think it's important to remember that true change does not happen overnight. We have to give ourselves a little bit of grace, and we have to give our partners a little bit of grace, because if you've ever been in a position where you have to admit that you're bad at something, or you have to recognize and be held accountable to the fact that you're doing something wrong, that's a hard thing to do. And then it's an even harder behavior to change, and it takes a lot of time. So don't lose faith in your marriage if you have a hard time accepting influence, if you have a hard time with your partner's inability to accept your influence in decision making. Like I said, it's not going to happen overnight, but hopefully with the rest of these principles that we go over, you'll find a lot of healing for the problematic areas in your relationship. Personally, I feel like my husband and I think we do okay. And I think it comes, this is going to sound really bad, but I think it has to do with the fact that we both admit that we're pretty dumb about most things. So we both kind of accept the fact that we don't know a lot about a lot of things. And we're both really humble in the sense that we know that we're always more willing to learn. But again, I want to reiterate, this does not need to be a man bashing episode. It doesn't need to be weaponized against our partners at all. And if this is an area that you struggle in your relationship, kindness and understanding goes a long way. And like I said, as we continue to go through the rest of the principles, hopefully there will be other like gems and nuggets and helpful, useful pieces of information in there that will also help with this principle. So that is it for this principle. Go to my Instagram so you can take screenshots of the exercise if you aren't reading the book yourself. Do the exercise with your partner, and I believe that on Friday we'll probably release an episode of us doing this survival island kind of exercise with my husband. We'll see how it goes. I can tell you right now, the sunblock lotion is not making it on the list. I wonder if he'll pick it. I bet he picks, I'm going to predict, I bet he picks, you know what, I'll save it. I'll see you on Friday and we'll go over this exercise together with my husband. Bye, guys.